All right, welcome back to another episode of Phoenix Edge. This is an RPG and gaming news podcast. My name is Hat,
And I'm Eric.
And I am Stan.
and today we are going to be talking about the new Paper Mario game that's been announced, Paper Mario the Origami King. Very excited to jump into this. And then we have Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition again. We've learned some more information. There's a new time attack mode and some other new additions that we want to go over. We're going to reveal the mystery character from last week, and then we're going to introduce a new one. And then we have 3 Discord questions from our audience. So we have from BioPhoenix, if you had to pick 5 characters from other RPGs into one game, who would you pick to be in your main party? Then we have, with all the remakes that have come out this year, is there a particular style you've come to prefer, such as Trials of Mana as a mere one-to-one remake in terms of story, with mostly visual and system upgrades, whereas the recent Resident Evils tend to have some liberties and the retellings for events and plot. And soon we'll have Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive offering both the one-to-one upgrade and story expanding DLC, which may or may not be well received, but has the advantage of new story being optional, etc. You get the gist. That's coming from Demaceles. And then we have from Valvedrix, which of the Final Fantasy combat systems is your favorite? And then Valvedrix goes and mentions the actual names of all of them, meaning traditional turn-based, ATB, active dimension battle from FF12, etc. I'm not going to go through all of them right here, but we will once we get there. So we got some really good topics today. So let's go ahead and start off with this new Paper Mario game that's coming out. Specifically, let's just kind of preface this with our history with the Paper Mario games. So just for total clarification, the only Paper Mario game I've ever played in my entire life was this past weekend. I played Paper Mario: A Thousand Year Door. About 5 hours into it. I'm enjoying it, but Stan, what's your Paper Mario?
My Paper Mario game.
Yeah, or games. I was trying to think of a clever word, but I couldn't. Go ahead.
I've only played one, and that's the first one on the N64.
Okay.
I've also replayed it one time on the Wii with the Virtual Console. I really liked it. It's a very charming, fun game. It has the Paper Mario series and also Super Mario RPG before it is known for the kind of button prompts or like quick time events almost that you have to do during the turn that you have in order to increase your damage or reduce damage taken. So that's really the main draw of the game. Is it's turn-based combat, but you've got like kind of an action element to it. And yeah, I really enjoyed the first game. I didn't get into the series more because I never really owned a GameCube. I would borrow it from friends, to play GameCube games, and they get to borrow my PS2, I get to borrow their GameCube, type of situation for a couple weeks.
Okay.
So, but they never owned the GameCube Paper Mario, which is the Thousand Year Door, I believe.
Right.
The GameCube one.
That's correct.
Yeah, so I never got to play that one simply because I never owned it or knew anybody who owned it.
Okay. So I had 3 questions here. Which Paper Mario games have you played? You said Paper Mario. Then you said, I'm assuming that's your favorite, and then you just explained why you've never picked up the other ones.
Mm-hmm.
I've never played any other Paper Mario game except this past weekend because I only had a PlayStation growing up. I was a PlayStation guy. And back when I was a kid, like, you just didn't have both unless you're a weirdos, right? So I only had a PlayStation. And by the time I ended up getting a Nintendo console that wasn't a Super Nintendo, I think the Paper Mario series was kind of on a decline, at least from what I heard and read from other people. They're kind of like, I don't really like it anymore. And there's other things for me to play that I missed out on. So I just didn't get into it. I don't know. But Eric, I know that you are the big Paper Mario fan here. So give us your favorite Paper Mario and just whatever you want to say about the Paper Mario games.
I am on the bandwagon with everyone. Thousand Year Door, easily. It's the The thing that's so great about the Paper Mario series is a lot of times they have very unique stories to them that are like really wacky out there. Like even with like Super Paper Mario, one of the stages you go through is you're fighting a fat nerd on the internet who makes what 2007's idea of leet and cool jokes are, and they make fun of that a lot. So the writing and everything is just so wacky and great that like you can't help but enjoy yourself going through it. Um, like you don't get the typical normal Mario like dialogue
Right.
in it at all. So there's a lot of clever jokes and just stuff to make you laugh on top of that. Um, the thing with the Paper Mario series in general is that the very first one and the second one also had very traditional turn-based systems where kind of similar to Mario RPG. It's like it's a time attack type of thing. So you have to choose like time your jumps or time your turtle shell kicking or uh, uh, properly dodge an enemy with certain characters. And you had like an assistant character to help you out, whoever you decided to let into your party at the time. And that's the kind of style people really liked. And the developers at Nintendo had another RPG series, actually, Mario and Luigi, which people are very aware also. That's another popular Mario RPG series, and that one definitely focused more on turn-based also. So basically Nintendo kind of came to the developers of Paper Mario here. It's like, hey, we already have a turn-based Mario like game. Can you guys like go more in a unique direction to make yourself distinct from that series? And so we kind of spun off into things. We got first Super Paper Mario for the Wii, and that was a complete haul over of the combat system. It had its RPG elements of like exploring, going to new places, great wacky story. But they switched out the combat for a more traditional Mario combat system. You walk around, you jump on enemies. You do build up gear and stats and levels, which makes your jump stronger to take down enemies. And it was a good game. I actually really enjoyed that game. It's a very different take from what the first two games gave, but I thought it was pretty good overall.
Okay.
Then we go into basically, we go into 3DS and we get a game, a special little game called Sticker Star, which was the major turning point of people not enjoying the series anymore. What they did is they brought turn-based battles back, but what they did was you had to collect stickers out in the field and you had to use them as stock to attack. Now, granted, they were plentiful, so you had to find shoe stickers, had to find turtle shell stickers, had to find um, like punching glove stickers, like around the field before you engage an enemy. And if you had nothing at the time, you're in a pretty bad position. And another thing people didn't like was you had to collect unique stickers in areas, and you constantly had to backtrack
Right.
to other areas to put stickers in, and people didn't enjoy that.
So it's a
People
lot
like
of busy work.
yeah, there's a lot of busy work.
Okay.
There's some clever things here and there, but the other thing people didn't like about Sticker Star is it went back to a very traditional Bowser's done something bad, and you got to go through the typical parts of Mushroom Kingdom back to them, which the first Paper Mario already did. So
Okay.
people are like, oh, we have to do this again. So
Yeah. So
people weren't happy with Sticker Star overall.
interesting. And then the last one was there was a Color Splash, right? Or that was the one on Wii or whatever, Wii U that came out like a
Yes,
couple years
and
ago, and that one was apparently not very good either.
it was a good game. Good, as in like the world was interesting to explore, and it was a very beautiful looking game. Like I've never seen colors used so vibrantly and so well in a game like that. The problem with Color Splash is they brought the sticker system back. Now, granted, there were cards this time instead of stickers, and you didn't have to backtrack the places. But the most annoying thing, and the game
Okay.
would have been so much better
Okay.
if what you had to do, you had to use the Wii U gamepad
Nope.
to
I'm
issue
out.
commands.
I'm out.
And you had to pick a card through your Wii U gamepad, pick the card you want, confirm if that's the one you want, and then you had to take your finger and slide it up to use it just for a normal attack. And that because of that, the combat pacing was so horrendously slow and annoying. And I tracked through it, but that was probably the worst way you could have done a combat system like that.
Right.
Now to the present day, we have Origami King coming out. And from what it looks like in the previews, this just the previews, and we actually got a snippet of the combat too, for one combat round, is they look like they're going back to form somewhat. What their words were, we're going back to traditional, but still in our own unique way. So it looks like we got a big new adventure. It's no Bowser has kidnapped Peach story like Color Splash and Sticker Star. You're fighting against this creepy Origami King and Origami Princess. Like the trailer just starts off kind of like a horror.
Well, hold on here.
Whatnot.
Let me get the trailer up here, and then we actually got a synopsis from the website, maybe with some kind of preface it. But you were talking about the creepy King Ollie, who appears to be the villain of the story, right?
Yeah, or the trailer starts off with the creepy Princess Peach, which I think is an extension of him, probably. And then it kind of just cuts out the Paper Mario, and so it's like, oh, it's not going to be nothing too bad.
Yeah. So basically this game is coming out in July, which is a big deal because that's right around the corner. That's very unexpected. Usually these games are announced and it's later in the year, so that's pretty cool. But I think a lot of the buzz that I've been seeing around this game that you've brought up, Eric, is that it seems that they might be returning to form with the combat system in terms of just being more turn-based and possibly having a little bit more RPG elements than we've seen in the past two games, which has gotten people pretty excited because it appears there's this ring-based system, which...
Yeah, it looks like they upped the strategy element of the combat.
Right. And then you can also see in one of the screens, I've seen a lot of people talking about this where at about minute 33 seconds in the trailer, you can see people in the crowd. And this was an element that I noticed from 1,000-Year Door where people would watch your battle and then they would take part in the battle or you had to interact with the crowd. It's a little weird. I'm still getting used to it, but how did you feel about that element in 1,000-Year Door? Did you like that element? And are you happy that that's coming back?
I won't know until until I play it, essentially.
But did you like it in 1,000-Year Door? That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, it was okay. Explain it to me again.
So in 1,000-Year Door, when you're in combat, there's going to be there's people that are actually watching the battle, right?
Oh, the audience.
The audience, yeah. So it
Right.
appears in this trailer that they're bringing that back because there's people in bleachers that are watching, and it looks like that they have some kind of influence over the battle. So it seems like they're taking a nod from some of the classics or the most beloved games, which has gotten a lot of people excited that are really big fans of this series.
Yeah, I remember they had that in the original Paper Mario also,
Oh, okay, cool.
because the battle took place almost like on a stage play, and so the audience was like in the front, and but they were kind of in the shadows, and kind of you could see them kind of cheer sometimes, like if you like got a critical hit or something,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you're not doing good, they'll boo you or throw stuff at you.
Yeah.
So, Eric, what would you say the consensus is among the fan base about this upcoming game? Do you feel that the fans are genuinely pretty excited, or do you think they're kind of like, oh, we've been burned too many times, this isn't going to be like it once was? What's your take on it.
I don't think people have ever been completely burnt out because there's not a particularly bad Paper Mario. I think the only one you can argue that's really bad, that could be bad, is Sticker Star,
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people
just for
didn't
a
like
lot
that
of
one.
stuff.
Right.
But there's still something about the worlds that you travel that are still like very charming about them. So I still believe people like them to an extent, but they want it back to the way Thousand Year Door was. And the way Origami King is, it kind of looks like a compromise. Like, okay, we're going to give you the world that you know and love. We're going to bring a traditional based combat, but we're not just going to give you exactly what we did in Thousand Year Door and the first Paper Mario. We're going to expand upon that and make something unique with the ring system here. So I think that's where the compromise lies. And I think from what I've seen, a lot of people seem okay with that. Some are cautiously optimistic, but I think people are overall okay. I think they don't see any stickers or cards this time, so they're relieved.
Yeah. Might be buttons or something.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, I mean, look, the game's coming out, from what I understand, on the same day as Ghost of Tsushima. So that is kind of a weird thing for me because being not that big of a Paper Mario fan, not in the sense that I don't like the series, it just, I haven't played a lot of them, so I'm not super attached to them. That's kind of a weird time to come out because it's not really attracting me to pick up the game when I have this other big game coming. Granted, it's a little bit different of an audience, but if I had to pick between the two, I don't think this game is going to win. It does look good, but I don't think this is going to be a day one purchase for me personally, but I have to see. It will for you.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick it up day one. I'll wait for Ghost of Tsushima later.
Yeah. Stan, where are you at with this?
Let me put it this way. Paper Mario is always going to be $60. Ghost of Tsushima is eventually going to be like $20.
Yeah, but I want to play that game before the PS5 comes out because once the PS5 comes out, those graphics aren't going to amaze me anymore. I want to be in the moment.
No, I get it. I'm just thinking logically here. If I had to pick which game first, I'd be
Right.
like, my wallet's going to be more appreciative if I take this route.
No, I
Instead
feel
of
you
paying
there.
$60 for two games.
Yeah.
Because Paper Mario is always going to be $60. Nintendo doesn't reduce their prices. Very rarely they do.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it depends. I'm still playing 1,000 Year Door, so maybe if that really starts to click with me some more, I might be more inclined to jump in with that game. Like, I do like it because it does have a lot of that funny dialogue that you're talking about and just a fun atmosphere. But so far, I'm kind of, it feels a little slow to me, like it just picking up. And part of it is just because I think these games are made for all audiences, right? So there'll be things like they'll explain a new element in the gameplay and they'll say, "Do you want me to explain it?" And I'll say no. And then it'll say, "Are you sure this is the only time?" And it gets me every time. And I'll let them explain it to me. And it's this big, long ordeal to explain something. And then once I get into the actual, gameplay element, it'll just do like a quick sentence explanation, which is all I needed, right? Whenever I highlight the command. So it's just a little wordy and a little slow for me right now, but I do see what people really like about that game. And if they can incorporate those elements in a more modern fashion with this, I think I could be on board. Stan, where you at?
I mean, it looks interesting. At the rate I finish games and with my backlog, I'm not really looking to get into it right away when it comes out. I've just got too much other stuff on my plate, but I'll be interested to see what the reception is for it coming out, and then think about getting it in the future.
Yeah, that's the thing. If this game comes out, because that's the kicker, right? Because lately Nintendo has just been crushing it. Not that Nintendo wasn't crushing it before, but it just seems like whatever they do is just really good for the most part. Aside their online service and stuff like that, but I mean actual games, right? They just seem to be killing it with their releases. And if this just is true to form to the other games, and this thing comes out and this is getting a 9.5 out of 10, and the fan base is just like, oh, it's just like 1,000 Year Door. It's just like Paper Mario. it's back to that classic era, I'm probably going to jump on the hype train and buy it. But if it comes out and it's kind of like a mediocre experience, maybe an 8 out of 10, I'm seeing across the board, I'm probably going to maybe get it on like a Black Friday sale or something like that.
I think a lot of people's motivation to get it's going to be based a lot if the combat system is a lot better or not, because the last two games like got into the like 7 or 8 territory just because of the combat system. Like a lot of reviewers are like, the worlds are great to explore, but like the combat system is like tedious and you know, crappy.
Right. Well, what I don't understand is from when I was reading up on this series, like you were saying, Eric, after A Thousand Year Door, and that was very well received, Nintendo said, well, we already have an RPG with Mario and Luigi. Why don't you try to do something different? And from what I understand, I haven't played the other games. You gave us a good kind of synopsis of the other games, earlier, but it seems to me that they just went more of the almost an action adventure route with, kind of crappy platforming and a lot of busy work. And they already kind of have that formula, and it's done better with, like, for example, the various Mario games that we have with at that time, maybe Mario Galaxy or something like that has the exploratory and collecting items and solving puzzles and much better platforming than any need to change something. I mean, if you can have more than one RPG, you don't have to. I guess I just don't understand the thought process behind it, but I guess that's all in the past. So, anyways, anything else on Paper Mario before we move on?
Please look forward to it. I'm personally excited for it.
I'm cautiously excited.
You know me, I'm never excited for anything.
Yeah, that's true. People are going to lose their minds. You're negative about the 7 remake, but then the Paper Mario might just take the king for the year.
I was super negative about that Xbox game announced, or what we talked about last week.
Oh, the Bandai Namco game? Yeah.
Yeah, everyone's like, yeah, there's something great about it. I think I might be looking forward to it. And I'm like, honestly, it's a piece of crap.
Yeah, well, Paper Mario is more your route.
Whatever floats your boat, yeah. Different for
Yeah,
everybody.
Paper Mario looks better than that game.
Oh, come on. Anyways,
That style.
we're not starting with this. Okay. So I kind of like that reveal of that last game, by the way. I like it. So anyways, moving on though, we have some more stuff with Xenoblade Chronicles. I'm just going to call it the DE edition because I think it's really arrogant for Nintendo or just call their game the definitive edition. I feel that that's something fans should say, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to call it the DE edition, even though the E stands for edition.
My head right now. Is there any other games that are called the definitive edition?
Isn't the Dragon Quest 11?
Yes,
Yeah.
But that is a definitive edition.
That's not the definitive edition because if I play it on the PS4 or PC, it looks better. So the moment I can have all those features on the PC, it's not definitive.
But it's got more content in the whole other version of the game.
But that's not the only measurement for definitive, though.
It's enough for me.
I guess. I mean, if they release that game on like a Game Boy graphics, but it has one extra quest, you're gonna be like, well, that's the definitive edition. You gotta take a full package. I guess it just depends. Let the fans decide. That's all I'm saying. Call it something else.
Isn't that essentially what Dragon Quest 11 is with the 2D mode?
Yeah, it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're not gonna get into it. But anyways, so
we're gonna have a whole lot of. We're not gonna get into this.
Yeah. Well, they've added some new stuff, some small stuff, but some new stuff to this game. So we covered some of the stuff last week, just giving a kind of a breakdown with Xenoblade Chronicles, what we liked about the old game, some of the new stuff. But there is some stuff that we missed. So Stan is going to give us a breakdown of this time attack mode, which is a mode from the earlier games or the newer games, but they've added into the older game here. So if that makes any sense, Stan, take it from here.
Yeah, so we got an article a few days ago from Siliconera talking about this time attack mode, and also I should mention that other YouTube channels have also mentioned this. People who were lucky enough to get a early copy or preview build.
No, this is the first time this is being brought up right here.
Is it?
Yeah, first place on
breaking
YouTube.
News.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I want to give credit to. I don't know all the people who have, put out this news, but
Right.
Siliconera is where I saw it first, and so yeah, it's a time attack mode that is unlocked. It looks like pretty early. Based on the screenshots from the article, which are in Japanese, but you can still see like level 20. Looks like it's the first challenge you can take when once your character is at level 20.
Okay.
You can take on these challenges, and in the article, and also kind of based on how the screenshots look, it looks like you can do a free challenge and also a what's called a limited challenge, which allows you to free challenge. You can set up your equipment and your characters however you like, and take on the challenge. But then there's limited, and the limited mode is your character party is going to be, and equipment and level is going to be set. Like you can't. It's just everything's preset for you, and you kind of have to figure out how to win with the hand you're dealt, essentially.
So it's basically like a Coliseum fight with like handicap mode, essentially.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Okay.
It seems that way.
And you said you have to be level 20, right, in order for this to appear. So it's not like something you have to beat the game or anything like that. It's just available within the game. It's just level 20.
Yeah, it looks like level 20 is the minimum, and then it goes up in increments of 5 levels. So you can't challenge the next one until you're level 25, and then 30 and 35 and so on.
And is this?
And I also imagine that they're locked out if like there's a particular boss in the time attack mode.
Okay.
I'm speculating. I don't know this for sure, but if there was an enemy that you have to fight in the main story that you haven't fought yet, that you managed to grind your way up to level 35 or something,
right?
I'm guessing it would probably be still locked until you fought the boss in the story first.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know that for sure. That might not be true.
According to my uncle that works at Nintendo.
You have one too?
Yeah, it's crazy. Anyways,
and
keep going.
It looks like again from the screenshot, it looks like there is some kind of portal or something in Colony 9 near the Gem Man stall where you
this little like kind of bright orb looking thing.
Yeah, it's like an orange glowing thing, and it says in the article that you can touch that light, and then you are taken to a different place where you do the time attack mode.
This is
keep going. Well, it says that there's a Nopon Arch Sage NPC that you talk to access the mode, and when
is
you
this guy with the tree on his head.
Yeah, when you beat that.
Oh, this is our Nope. Okay, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, when you beat the mission, he'll give you Nopon stones, which you can then exchange for equipment and gems. And the equipment that we've seen so far from the screenshots looks like it's very like silly, like kind of jokey equipment, though the stats for all we know could be very good.
Right. So it looks like we have, I'm assuming this is Ricky, who has like a tree growing out of the top of his head. Then we have Dunban and basically a bathrobe. Yep. Right. And then Shulk in some kind of swim gear with, his flippers, and we have Ryan with flip flops on, and I don't know what this is, like a I don't know.
Summertime clothes or something. Yeah.
I don't know. He's got glasses on, so it's kind of a poking fun.
Yeah.
Do we get experience points during this too? Do we know? It looks like you do, because I wonder if they went ahead and added this mode back. Well, I keep saying back in, but they added it in after it was new elements from newer games. They went back, since they're remaking this, they're putting it in this game in order to kind of give players an option to quickly gain levels, maybe if they don't want to grind, because the game was fairly grindy originally. So I wonder if just having this time attack mode gives players another route to just quickly do a bunch of battles if they don't want to go run around, half the continent looking for turnips.
Maybe so. Yeah, it is kind of like you mentioned, in line with the games that have come out since the first one,
Right.
because Xenoblade Chronicles X had a time attack missions. They called them missions, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there was only 8 of them in the game, and like total, just 8 missions. That's it.
That's
And
it. Jeez.
yeah, I didn't really get into them that much. It
Felt
tacked on. It didn't really feel like it was a big focus of the game.
That was Chronicles X.
Yeah,
right?
Chronicles X on the Wii U.
Okay.
And then I haven't played Xenoblade Chronicles 2, but from what I understand, it had a time attack mode added via DLC, although it was called challenge mode, but it was the same idea. You have to beat waves of enemies within a certain period of time in
Right.
order to clear it. And the faster you do it, the better rank you get.
Oh boy.
And it also had a Nopon Arch Sage who gave you the rewards at the end of it.
So it's basically the same thing. Okay.
Yeah, it's basically what was in Xenoblade Chronicles 2 that got added as DLC. It's going to be in the game here from the start.
So you know what this might be in addition, aside from what I just said, was basically giving players another option to level up without having to do all the extra stuff if they don't want to. But I've seen a lot of people that have only played the newest Xenoblade game, and they really like that game, and they've never played this game, and they're excited about it. But I keep seeing questions pop up. Do we know if they've added anything from the most recent Xenoblade Chronicles 2 into this game? Is there more Easter eggs? Is there more tie-ins? How familiar is it going to feel? And we've already talked about the update to the art style being more in keeping with that second one, that's just came out, to try to make that appear more cohesive. Not a big fan of that, but whatever. They've done it. I can't do anything about it. But having this element here might be another case where they're just trying to make it a little bit more familiar to some of the newer fan base, I think.
Yeah, that's true. And also it gives them a route to add more DLC, I guess you could say, to this game if they really wanted to. Like the time attack mode is already in there, like programmed into the game. It probably wouldn't be too difficult for them to just add more challenges, right, as time goes on.
How do you think they're going to do that, though? Because I would think that for me personally, if you're going to add DLC, I know that you weren't saying you think this is a good idea, but if they were going to add DLC, I would prefer DLC to be more story based, like the stuff we're getting with Melia, right? With the Futures Connected or whatever they're calling it, where it's basically stuff that happens after the game finishes. And that's cool, but they're giving that in this edition, this remake. So that's coming with the game, which I think is really cool. If you're going to remake the game, give us more story content. That's really cool. You're not just porting the original game and charging $60, going the extra mile. That's cool. But since they're already putting that in the game, I kind of feel like they could have just sold that as DLC. So you think
it'd be interesting if they could one up themselves. For how much I don't care about Xenoblade 2, the really cool thing they did was they made a DLC expansion that could
30 hours
argue could be an RPG in itself.
Yeah, I've seen so many people talk about Torna Country, I think is what it was called, right? And they said I've seen people literally tell me they did not like the regular game at all, but like Torna Country, that was one of their favorite games.
You can buy it
yeah,
separately.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like standalone physical version as well. I don't know how many were made, but when it was released, there was like a physical box that you could get of just Torna. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's just crazy that's like the reception for that, and also like Eric's pointing out, the quality that they put into there.
I kind of felt like the epilogue we're getting with Xenoblade is kind of like that. I assumed it's not going to be as big. I think it's probably going to be, what did I say last time? Like a 10 to 15 hour experience, maybe.
Yeah.
My guess. I mean, it could be longer. It could be like this big thing in itself, but it's not really being advertised as such. It's being advertised as a epilogue.
Well, that's why I'm surprised that, given Torn Country was so popular and that, sold and made the money, they made this, they could have easily just sold that as DLC separately, and I'm sure they would have made a lot more money, So it makes me wonder, do they have something else in their pocket?
Yeah, I think they did because I think they added the Future Connected into this game like on launch rather than trying to sell it as DLC later because they wanted people they may be under the impression that some of the older fans who have played the game maybe on the Wii or the 3DS or both are like, I'm not buying the game a third time. Like, come on, like like I've played this game a bunch already. Like, what's so great about this version? And then that Future Connected epilogue is kind of like the
Me?
like more enticing to people who have already played the game, right? If you really
I think
you get that extended experience.
I think I fall into that category. Not necessarily that I own it on the Wii. I emulated the game. I've been very transparent about that. Looks great in 1080p, by the way. But I emulated the game, and I wanted the original game just on the Switch, to be able to play on my TV in HD. And they're not doing that, so I was kind of like, I'm not going to buy this game. I already have the way I want to play it. But them adding this new story content is, and then like adding this new gameplay mode, and then they're also updating the map feature to where they just have like a tracking mode where it has a dotted line that goes to the next quest instead of just a big cone window. So people are saying that they're breezing through the game much faster. Putting in that extra work, I think, is going to pay off for people like me, because now I want to buy it.
Yeah, that really is one of the bigger barriers to entry, or like barriers to like think about and going back to replaying the game, is the length, right? And how kind of tedious some of the things were to deal with
right
in the original version. Yeah, so that's definitely a big plus as well.
Yeah. Well, like I said, they've also added a auto run, which I couldn't remember if that was a feature or not. It didn't particularly bother me, but apparently it's new. So there's an auto run instead of holding a button to run. So that's cool. And like I said, there's a dotted line to quests now as opposed to a cone. So it's a little bit easier to breeze through the game, which kind of speeds it up. And perhaps with this new time attack mode, you might be able to grind a little bit instead of, trying to find the best area with the best monsters to gain the best, EXP and equipment, etc.
Or do the side quests.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
that
still
are plentiful.
Yeah. Yep. So I'm actually kind of looking forward to this game. I've gotten over the fact that I didn't like the character models. I still don't. But I do think the environments look really, really good, and the updated lighting and just these new features. It's getting me excited. So I'm gonna pick it up.
It's gonna be a day one for me also.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So let's move on to the mystery character. Last week, we put a character up and you all guessed it really easily. So let's see if I can get this character up again.
Yeah, everybody who took a guess got it right on the first try. So,
dang, you're all going to have to share a hat to PS4.
Dude, I did not
just send it to each other once in a while.
I did not appreciate that you offered my PS4 for everyone that guessed it right.
Really? You should have spoken up about it.
I did. I was like, I don't know if I would take that wager. All right, so Stan, who was our character last week?
It was Fei Fong Wong, the main character from Xenogears.
All right, so we've gone ahead and we're copied down the people that guessed it right in the comments. First person that got it right they've been awarded 2 points. Everyone else got 1 point, and we're keeping a tally here. And when we select some games that we want to discuss, we're going to come out with a list of games and let you guys vote. And however many points you have are going to be the amount of votes you get towards that game. So you're going to be able to influence what we discuss in the future. And a good job on everyone guessing that right last week. But we've got a new character this week.
Yeah, there's currently a 4-way tie for first place. Four people have 2 points each.
Who are they? Do you know? You have it up on the screen?
Yes, it's Dan K, who guessed Fo Lu from Breath of Fire 4 first. Andrew H, who guessed El Azul from Legend of Mana. Unbound Manato, who last week guessed Fei Fong Wong from Xenogears. And then we have Idris's Pieces, who has 2 points because they guessed both Fao Lu and Fei. Not the first correct answer, but they got both of those characters correct.
Just coming in with the assist. Yeah, man. See, that's the thing. If you feel like you've already seen somebody else guess it, just take a guess because you'll at least get 1 point. So
yeah, you can get 1 point if you get it right, even if somebody's already guessed it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So while I have the current character image on the screen, go ahead and take a look at that. Try to figure out who it is. Leave a comment in our comment section. And while you're looking at that, I'm just going to remind you about our media partner, RPG Fan. So I highly encourage everyone to go to rpgfan.com. They are a great source of RPG news, game reviews, soundtrack reviews. They have other RPG podcasts amongst our own. They have Random Encounter, which does news, discussions, opinions. And then they have Retro Encounter, which is more book club styled RPG podcast where they pick a game every month to discuss, and they just go super deep into that game. So very, very cool podcast. Been going on a long time. Highly suggest you go check them out. And then they also have a YouTube page that they're starting to promote more. And they're actually doing video versions of their game reviews on their YouTube page at RPG Fan. So go check that out. A lot of the stuff is, not all of it, but some of it is stuff that from my playthroughs of the games. For example, The Outer Worlds, Final Fantasy VII Remake. Let's see what else. Fire Emblem Three Houses, the DLC was my actual playthrough. So you can go on there and check out some of my gameplay footage. I've also provided some voiceover over there as well for, which game was it? The Fire Emblem Three Houses DLC. So I provided the voiceover for that review as well. So a lot of cool stuff happening over there. You can go check that stuff out. And I also want to give a little shout out about some of our other episodes that we've worked on, specifically some other game discussions we've done in the past. So we just got done with basically, I don't know, a 3 or 4 part game discussion on the Final Fantasy VII Remake. Before that, we did Final Fantasy VII, the original game. That was about a 4.5 hour discussion. We did Crisis Core, which again, another 3-hour discussion. We did a 3-part discussion on Final Fantasy 15. That was our very first 3 episodes. We also discussed Final Fantasy 13, Xenoblade Chronicles, Dragon Quest 11, Dragon Quest 5, Kingdom Hearts 3, Knights of the Old Republic, and Chrono Trigger. And for those of you participating in the mystery character voting, you are going to help decide the next game that we're going to talk about. So let's go ahead and move on to Discord questions. All right, so for our first question here, we have from BioPhoenix, who says, if you had to pick 5 characters from other RPGs and put them into one game, who would you pick to be in your main party and why? So how do you guys want to do this? We could each just name our 5 characters and why, or should we just trade off? I think I want to name all 5 of mine in one swoop. So, because they're kind of interrelated. I'll go ahead and start us off. Sure. So my first character, I just had to pick Geralt from Witcher 3, mainly because he's the all-time like best party member you could have, because he's super knowledgeable about combat and then also curses and also monsters. He's very good at crafting. I mean, you could not have a better person in your party. So, and also he's great at solving mysteries. So there's very little this guy does not do well, except, be nice or get along with people, but whatever, we can deal with it. So I picked Geralt as my main party member, but to go along with him, I felt that he would get along great with Balthier, because Witchers are all about the coin and Balthier is all about the coin.
Yeah.
And plus, if I was to have an RPG, I absolutely want an airship. And I know I could pick Cid because the airship is kind of Cid's deal, but Balthier's the leading man, right? So we're going to have Balthier and Geralt, and they're going to be riding around on an airship, and it's going to be badass. I also think I also want to put Ashley Riot from Vagrant Story in there, mainly because he has a similar role, I think, to Geralt towards the end of the game, where he's just kind of searching out evil, I guess. I don't want to go any more deeper than that, but I just feel that he would kind of get along with that crew, and they kind of have a similar role in a sense. But I feel like this game is getting a little too uppity for its own good. Okay, with these characters. So I would put Terra from Final Fantasy VI to kind of just JRPG this a little bit more, and just kind of have like a supernatural presence there. I was careful who I wanted to put in my party because I know Geralt likes to slay monsters, so I didn't want to put like Vincent in the party because I don't know how Geralt and Vincent are going to get along. I mean, Geralt's pretty understanding. Like, he understands, well, you're not evil, so I'm not going to hurt you, but I just don't want anything bad to happen to Vincent, right? So I just had to be kind of careful. I felt like, well, Tara's she's just got power. She's not actually, a monster or anything, right? So I wanted to put her in there, and then I felt like Aloy from, I don't care if it's not RPG, it's basically an RPG. Aloy from Horizon Zero Dawn, she hunts, big robot monsters, whatever. She's going to get along great. And I think she would be good at, kind of being my long range attacker along with Balthier. And, Ashley and Geralt can kind of get in there and take care of business, and Tara will be my magic user. So this is my wacky RPG, and that's my party.
Very nice.
Stan, what do you got?
You took it a kind of a different route. You were like thinking about the characters and how they would
get along. Well,
actually get along.
I don't want to like have to Dr. Phil this.
Yeah,
I want them to just organically get along. Yeah.
Yeah, the party dynamic. Yeah, I was more thinking of it in terms of gameplay and like.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, my Geralt's going to be playing in a turn-based game, by the way. Keep going.
Yeah, I was thinking of like more so like what characters from games I already like. Kind of some of my favorite characters, and how would I like to see them like in a different context, I guess.
Okay.
Like in a different combat system. So with that premise, I want like a kind of a Tales of style combat system.
Okay.
But with like some of my favorite Final Fantasy characters and other RPG characters, like I think a Dragoon in that kind of combat system would be awesome. And I like Kain as a character. So
dude, yeah,
I would put
badass.
Kain in there. Yeah. And then a summoner would also be pretty cool. So like, which I don't know how they would handle that if they had like a really epic summon monster come in, like that kind of combat system. But Rydia, I think would be pretty awesome. So two FF4 characters, but why not? It's my pick, right? That's my choice. So, and then Terra also from FF6, because I think that would be really cool with her like Esper form.
Yeah.
And you could do some kind of cool stuff with that, where if like, if she was kind of in human form, she could have like different attacks, different moveset, and then change into Esper form and like play differently.
Oh, I forgot maybe Esper form. That I don't know how that's going to jive. Okay, keep going.
With Geralt, right?
Yeah. Well, I think he would understand, but just keep going. All right.
Maybe she could keep it hidden, and that would be some kind of drama. Well, you could.
He's very keen. I think his medallion would start like shaking or something. But whatever.
Yeah. And then I'd also like to see Orin in that kind of combat system, kind of like he could be like kind of the tank.
Okay.
Like the more tanky like slower movement but powerhouse kind of character. And then the fifth one I thought about, but I didn't really come to a good conclusion. I kind of wanted like a gun wielding character also, because I think that would make a good addition.
So
But
who
I
you
couldn't.
thinking?
I thought Vincent, but that's like I mean, yeah, why not Vincent? I guess. But
Okay.
Balthier would also be pretty cool.
You can go Barrett, right?
That's true. Barrett, yeah. He kind of fits in his own game like pretty well, though.
You can get Squall, maybe.
I'm not the biggest Squall fan, but
Okay.
yeah, those are my five. Like those four characters I mentioned, and then I'm kind of
Or you have
I would take a
maybe?
gun wielding character.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Prompto and Orin interacting could be entertaining. So yeah, why not? We'll take him.
See, but I feel like Orin puts up with Titus because of Jick. I don't know if Orin would put up with Prompto.
Right, yeah.
I don't know. Eric, what do you got? If you're gonna put five.
He had to step away for a minute.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I missed that. All right, so we'll come back to that if he is able to come back. Next question is Shatera, who says, with all remakes that have come out this year, is there a particular style you've come to prefer? Trials of Man is a more one-to-one remake in terms of story, with mostly visual and system upgrades.
Man, poor Eric didn't even get to say his 5 characters.
Well, we'll rewind a little bit. We have that feature. All right, we just rewound. Okay, so who are your 5 characters in your RPG?
I'll go a little faster.
Okay.
Blue from Breath of Fire, she's OP
Okay.
in all situations. Beatrix from FF9, again, OP in a lot of situations.
Okay.
It's hard, can reduce everyone to 1. Rhyme from Xenoblade, because I always need to know what time it is. Erdrick from Dragon Quest III, because he's all good all across the board, healing, power, offensive magic, good at everything. And Estinian from 14, because cool, you need a really badass dragoon in your party.
Yes, Dragoon, I agree.
I don't know. I feel like if I boot this game up and I hear it's Rhine time, I'm just
Call yourself a Xenoblade fan.
yeah.
But yeah, that's mine. Onwards.
Very nice.
I didn't even think about Shulk. He's got anyways, I'm not gonna get into spoilers. he's pretty OP himself. Shotera says, with all the remakes that have come out this year, is there a particular style you've come to prefer? Trials of Mana is a more one-to-one remake in terms of story, with mostly visual and system upgrades, whereas the recent Resident Evils tend to take some liberties in the retellings for events and plot. And soon we'll have Xenoblade Chronicles DE, offering both the one-to-one upgrade plus story expanding DLC, which may or may not be well received, but has the advantage of new story being optional. So I guess, how much do you enjoy a remake shaping up the story versus staying faithful to the original experience? Me, personally, guys, I think it depends on why the game's being remade and why people want the game remade. And I think if it's the story that is the thing that people want remade, then you got to keep the story the same. But I'm okay with them like kind of fleshing stuff out that's a little muddy, or maybe they want to relocalize something, or if because it's going to be more realistic, they need to have more dialogue, stuff like that, or if they want to just add in some extra backstory. I'm cool with that, but I don't think you should dramatically change it. But if it's going to be something that's, more people want it remade because of the setting or the gameplay, which is, I think, was more the Resident Evils kind of fall in that zone where it's people are more in love with the setting and the premise rather than every moment of the, you're not going to have people questioning dialogue changes, right? As long as it's generally the same, people are going to be okay with it. Then I think it's okay to take a little bit more liberties, but you have to understand that if the more liberties you take, the more onus is going to be on you to make it better, right? Because if it's not as good as the original and you made changes, then you're kind of that's your own fault. You put yourself in that box yourself. So that's my take on it.
I guess for me, it really depends. Like I still think Resident Evil 1 is one of the best remakes
Okay.
ever made. See, what they did was they looked at what people loved about the original that may be looked upon as kind of outdated. It's like, okay, pre-rendered areas, like uh it's like people like the big 3D environments and such. So like, so what's wrong with this now? It looks too light. It looks graphically out of date.
Right.
So let's amplify it and let's make it look really dark and scary again, how people saw it back in the old days, and recreate it for the modern. And that's the kind of remake I really like. They try to bring back what exactly people loved about the game back then and modernize it to the extent that a new audience can get into it. And that's what happened. A lot of new people enjoyed that remake. And I don't know. I guess my remake definition's just kind of all over the place. I think a lot of people's are, because there's a lot of debate on what's considered a remake and not a remake nowadays. But
Yeah.
like, if you gave me FF7, I would tell myself the same thing with like Resident Evil. I would like just update the character sprites to look more appealing. I would upres the backgrounds um to give the more vibrant look that we saw on that CRT TV, but make it look real good in HD. And I think stuff like that and a UI update is enough to get a modern audience in and recreate that magic that the game did back in the PlayStation
So
era.
let me ask you this then, because I think that Final Fantasy VII is an excellent example, just because we had the remake, but also because the
Mhm.
original clearly had issues. It looks dated, right? Look, the blocky characters, the poor localization. But let's say they were going to remake Final Fantasy X.
Well, you have to ask yourself what's wrong with Final Fantasy X that they need to.
So you would err on, in the vein of the question, you would err on the staying faithful to the original as opposed to shaking the story up.
Yeah, I mean, at worst, you can add additional points to the story if you want.
Okay.
Like if you feel like something's like missing story wise, or like you want something expanded on a little more, I think that's fine. But I don't think you should go completely off route of the main plot. Like, you want to add to the story. You don't want to just throw sidetracks here to get your, like, just to for the sake of filling and expand. Like,
Yeah.
if there's something there you truly feel like is missing in the story that was a flaw in the previous, because look at the Resident Evil. Do you want that type of dialogue in the remake and the way they talk and everything? No, it's like there does have to be some things that need to be uh, updated.
This is funny that you brought this up, because I've been, over the last like 8 months, I've been assisting, along with a lot of people, assisting Lore Runner with providing lines, because he's providing voiceover for the entirety of Final Fantasy IX, and he's editing it and making like a movie out of it and everything. And it's been way more work than I thought, but I've already said I would do it, so I've been doing it. And he put me as Amaranth, right? And having to actually act Amaranth's lines from Final Fantasy IX, there are so many lines of dialogue in that game. If you speak out loud with that character, he would never say that.
Mhm.
Right? He would never say it like that. That is poorly worded, right? But once it's just because it's 20 years old and it's written and you're not saying it out loud, it's just, it's okay. It's okay. But yeah, if they were like Eric, like you were saying, if they were to remake it, they would probably have to change the dialogue. So
To an extent. And like, when I look at something like Resident Evil 2, like, I actually look at that as more of a reimagining than a
mhm.
remake. Because I feel like a remake, you kind of just like build from the ground up like the same thing, but you like modernize it. Again, Resident Evil 1. is what I see as a remake, and Resident Evil 2 is what I see as a reimagining. Same with FF7. That's a reimagining. I
Right.
look at remake to me is more like a one by one
Yeah.
type deal. But then you have a game like Trials of Mana, which does a whole overhaul, but it's still everything is faithful. So that's where I question what defines a remake right there, because Trials of Mana is that meet in the middle type of deal, because it's a whole big 3D graphical environment, the game, despite it being a Super Nintendo game, which was a 2D flat field ultimately. So that's where I question what exactly is considered a remake. And I think there's multiple definitions, and everyone's just going to have their own idea of what is considered a remake.
Stan, where do you fall in this? Do you what style of remake or reimagining, or what do you prefer?
I prefer the I think Eric just mentioned it, to modernize it, right? But that can mean many things, right? So that can mean the script needs to be fixed, right? Like you mentioned with Amaranth, right? If there's someday going to be a version of Final Fantasy IX with professional voice acting, right? Then
Right.
obviously you have to modernize the script so that it can actually be spoken.
He would
You
never
know,
say, "I prefer to find beneficial ways to help people." That's just not an Amaranth thing to say. And
it's
it's
also very wordy. Yeah.
yeah, he's like a 4 word or less character. So, anyways.
Yeah. Like that's this is a good example for improvement in like a Legend of Dragoon remake, right?
Hmm.
That script is so dated and you know even difficult to read at the time. Like you could probably almost throw the whole thing out, and start over. But
Yeah.
then like there's also like gameplay. And the example here is Metal Gear Solid, the original game. To a lot of people, the gameplay feels very dated, especially after Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3.
Hmm.
And what they did when they remade the game, the Twin Snakes on the GameCube, they just took the gameplay that was in 2, Metal Gear Solid 2, and tried to map it onto what existed before with Metal Gear Solid 1. And
Right.
then they called it the Twin Snakes. They didn't call it Metal Gear Solid the definitive edition or
Right.
anything.
Like, there's
It
nothing.
was something else. It was a different style, right?
Right.
So
I considered that a remake, most definitely. The Twin Snakes, like
yeah,
they built Metal Gear Solid 1 from the ground up again with Metal Gear Solid 2's graphics engine.
yeah. And the story is largely the same, though there are some differences, right? But it's not like kind of trying to do its own thing that um it's not as big of a departure as like Final Fantasy VII remake, for example. It's largely the same with some differences.
Yeah, there's only minor differences in the dialogue, and some of the action scenes have more Matrix like things going on than the original, but besides
Hmm.
that, it's very faithful to the original game.
Yeah. So that's kind of, I guess I'm kind of on the same page with Eric. It's like, what needs to be done to the original game to modernize it so that like if somebody had never played the original, they can pick up the controller and like kind of be as if they're playing, a modern game, right? Like, and that's kind of what like FF7 remake did with the combat, right?
Hmm.
Because the combat definitely feels more modern and more in line with like an action style RPG that would be made today, right?
See, but if you're going to modernize something, I think that there's a line to be drawn, right? With
Yeah.
remaking, and you have to question, why are we remaking this in the first place? Why is there a push to remake this? And then the thing that has inspired people to ask for a remake, that thing has to remain as close as possible, I think. And then the
Hmm.
outer stuff, like you've mentioned, combat or, music, remastering it with an orchestra or something, or just the
Yeah.
graphics, that's modernizing it in areas that feels appropriate, because no one was like, you know what I really liked about Final Fantasy VII? I really like the snowboarding. I cannot wait till they remake that so they can, like no one, no one's okay, and everyone's going to be okay if it's not the same, So
Mm-hmm.
that's a easy area for them to modernize and not mess with the thing that people liked.
Yeah, it's like the balancing act, right? How do you modernize it without making it something completely different?
Yeah.
And some people say, with the Final Fantasy VII remake, for example, the combat is so different. They're like, no, I'm already not on board, right? Like it's too much of a departure from the turn-based system as before, and that to those people was like something they really really cared about, in the original game. Like they really loved the ATB combat system,
It's true.
and so for them, they're like, just from the very beginning, they weren't on board with what the remake was doing. So you're gonna have that, that's gonna happen just naturally. I mean, I'm sure there's some people out there who um, prefer the old style of the Resident Evil 1 and 2, compared to the remade versions. So it's
Yeah,
tough. It's like you want to modernize things, but by doing that, you're almost automatically kind of turning some people off.
sure.
I feel
Yeah.
like another good example is the Crash Bandicoot and the Spyro
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
remasters. It's like that definitely was them going back saying, okay, is there something we can do to modernize and update this? And all they did is they updated the graphics and they tweaked the controls to make it feel better to move around than the old janky feeling of the PlayStation games. It's like, in terms, and now we all know FF7's story. It's everyone wanted Advent Children, Final Fantasy, and Square Enix decided to answer to that.
But
But
did
like
everyone keep going?
FF7, with FF7, besides the character sprites, the low res backgrounds, and the mini games, like, does anything else truly need to be updated with that game? You can argue like remake the UI also to look
Mhm.
modern also, but
Yeah.
like there's nothing else about that game you really gotta
Well,
do.
Kate Sith. I don't. We can modernize that with the delete button.
Or at least explain or portray the character better.
Yeah, or like why Rufus wants the tiny Bronco from the Sid's
Yeah,
village
patch
stuff.
those kind of lingering plot holes or questionable story decisions, I guess. Yeah.
Well, that's
But
that. Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say that's the thing. I mean, for certain classics like with Xenogears, right, where you have the second disc, that's like a bunch of like cutscenes and stuff mostly, or there's
Mm-hmm.
large portions of it anyways. Like if you were to remake the game, you wouldn't want them to just do that for the second half again, right? Like you wouldn't be pissed like, oh, second half of the game's not cutscenes. What the hell? Or just like just dialogue. So if there's stuff to fix too, but I guess it comes down to what you think should be fixed and others don't think should be fixed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which is tough because it'll never be the same for everyone.
Legend of Dragoon, I think, is probably, like Stan mentioned earlier, is probably one of the few games I would say there's so much outdated about it that you should just straight out just reimagine the game.
Yeah.
Just like reboot it and just start over, because there's a lot of I love the game, but like it's graphically outdated in so many ways, like in the combat, and then the character sprites, the localization of the story, a lot of missing plot elements in
Yeah.
there. Like that's something you look at and say, okay, this would be really hard to salvage if we did an HD remaster. Like this is something we need to start from the ground up, rewrite the story, redesign the characters.
Sounds like you hate it.
No, I mean it is what it is.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
You said it's a little rough. Yeah.
Yeah,
it was a
but
good product for its time. Yeah.
your example of Xenogears, that would be a tough one, just because of that second disc.
Yeah, it
Like,
would be like, what are you supposed to do? I mean, I guess that was a flaw, but it's yeah.
there's some gems that can't be touched, man.
Or should you? Yeah, because that game. Yeah. Anyways, so I don't know. I guess it just Shatera, just to summarize, I guess it just depends on the game. Was it a timeless classic, or was there things that could be fixed? And then also, why did people like the game to begin with? And if they could just bring those elements, and then they could change other stuff, like we brought up with Final Fantasy VII, you can change the mini games, but keep the story the same, etc. Whereas with Resident Evil, Eric really liked the visual aspect with the remake. He felt like, right, Eric, you thought that kind of brought on the same tone and the same feel
For
that
which one?
for Resident Evil 1, right?
Yeah, it brought back everything people loved about the original. The horror,
You
because if you one
hold
Resident
on,
Evil,
Eric. Hold on. Sorry, you're breaking up there. Stan, can you say something real quick, just to make sure if you're
Yeah, we still good?
okay? You both sound like robots right now in my ears. Let me make sure it's not just me. Sorry, guys, we're streaming and we got technical difficulties.
How about now?
It's still the same. Let me go to this chat here and see, do we have anybody that can give us some live feedback here? How if you're watching this, can you just give us an idea of how Eric and Stan's audio is? If it's just me, we'll keep going. I just want to make sure.
We coming in like robots?
Well, you're kind of coming in like you're underwater, and it's just like, yeah, robots is a good term too. Oh, sounds fine. Okay, maybe it's just me. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure. So keep going, Eric. Sorry.
I lost my train of thought. What was I saying again?
Resident Evil 1.
Oh, right. But if you play the original Resident Evil 1 again, it's really hard to get scared of things in that game because like everything is just outdated looking, pixelated. The voice acting is hilariously bad, you know, and all these type of elements. So they looked at that and they pretty much agreed with themselves. And they said, okay, we need to scare people again. And they did great things for that. They redid all the pre-rendered backgrounds and everything looks horrifying again. You don't know what's coming up in the corner. They did do little small additions, like you got the Crimson Heads. So the gimmick to that is if you don't burn the zombie you killed in the game, they'll come back later in the game as a Crimson Head, and they're much faster and they're much harder to kill. So little things like that, I think are fine additions to something like a remake because they brought back like the main point of the game is to be a horror game.
Right.
So that's just called being faithful.
Yeah. Basically, as long as you do it well, we're happy.
Yeah.
Just don't...
If you understand what made the original title work so well, I think that's a good start when you're doing a remake.
Yeah, for sure. All right, we have one last question here from Valvedrix, who says, which of the Final Fantasy combat systems is your favorite? For reference, and that's only for the main series. You can still pick from the spinoffs. You have traditional turn-based for Final Fantasy 1 through Final Fantasy 3. You have ATB, or Active Time Battle, for Final Fantasy 4 through Final Fantasy 9. You have conditional turn-based for Final Fantasy 10. You have real-time battle, Final Fantasy 11 and Final Fantasy 14 uses an evolved version. Then you have active dimension battle, which is Final Fantasy 12, command synergy battle, which is Final Fantasy 13, and active X or active cross battle, I guess, for Final Fantasy 15. And Valvedrix did not put Final Fantasy 7 Remake on here because that's a spinoff, but Valvedrix said spinoffs could be applied also. But which of the Final Fantasy combat systems is your favorite? Stan, why don't you start us off?
Okay, so I was thinking about this, and while I enjoy ATB, it's hard to say because I've always felt that when you get really powerful abilities late in those games, like the combat becomes kind of too easy. I guess you could say that about all of these games, but um, my favorite is actually Final Fantasy X, the conditional turn-based battle, just because I feel like from beginning to end, you kind of have that strategy element to the game. I feel is stronger than some of the previous games, right? Because no matter what level you are, what part of the game you're in, it's all about you know, choosing actions that will tweak the turn order into your advantage.
I'm sorry, you said Final Fantasy X?
Yeah, 10.
Okay.
Because you've got the turn order gauge right on the side of the screen that allows you to see when the monsters are going to make their attacks. And I just really enjoy that element of manipulating the turn order into my advantage through like haste or delay attack or whatever different attacks I can do. And when you choose them, it shows you kind of like a quick preview of how that will adjust, that will affect the upcoming turns. And also the battles, because for the most part your characters can, at least the regular battles, they wrap up really quick because your characters are all kind of designed in a way that you take out the enemies in one hit, essentially, maybe two hits. Like Orin has to attack the armored enemies, Waka has to attack the flying, Lulu's got her enemies she takes out with magic, and so on. And it's like just really well designed overall, I think.
Yeah, I think like my favorite thing about Final Fantasy X's combat system, that's not my favorite combat system, but my favorite thing about that combat system, in addition to the things you brought up, was just I think the variety of being able to trade characters in and out of battle. It just gives you access to so many different options, and there's so many boss battles that you are basically, I mean, unless you're OP, you basically have to trade members in and out of combat in order to get through the battle, especially later in the game. And you have to utilize your entire party's expertise, basically, to get through it. I mean, Kamari's probably the best. I'm just kidding. This is our running thing. We're trying to get Eric to like Kamari. But yeah, so Final Fantasy X is really good. Keep going. I'm sorry.
Oh no, that was pretty much it. But I guess I'll just add I wish they would have kept going with this combat system and kind of tweaked it, in a future game.
Right.
It, since Final Fantasy X and onward, they've gone with drastically different battle systems
every time
with every game. Kind of their search for the answer, right, of a perfect hybrid system. But what I'd really like to see is the conditional turn-based battle system return and reward you for having your characters have like back like turns like back to back. So, for example, like if you had the dual tech and triple tech system from Chrono Trigger, kind of just like imported into Final Fantasy X, right? But you could only use those when like Titus and Yuna had a turn back to back, right? And then you could spend both of their turns at the same time to do like a dual tech, right? Or if Titus, Yuna, and Orin had all three turns in a row, right, before with no interruptions before the enemy turns came, then you could do like a triple tech between those three characters. Something like that. Like they could build on what's already been made, right? But it was turn-based battle, so that's not modern enough, right? So they were like, yeah, that's too boring we're not going to sell 20 million copies of a game with a turn-based battle system, right? So they just kind of moved on.
Well, they're the only company, they're not the only company, but they're one of the few companies I know of that they'll get like roaring praise from their fan base about what like something they liked, and they'll just be like, we're not doing that.
That's not good enough, yeah.
They're like, Final Fantasy X got like great, like across the board, everyone loved the battle system. And then even Final Fantasy X-2, a lot of people say, I don't like X-2's story, but I like the battle system, and they've got a lot of positive praise for that. But it's Square. They can't, if you like it, it means that they shouldn't do it again in the future.
Yeah.
So
I mean, Final Fantasy X-2, while it's not exactly the same, you at least have something kind of similar with 13 and Lightning Returns, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
you are essentially job class changing on the fly, and all of a
Right.
sudden your abilities are all different. So that at least it's not the same thing, but at least there it seems like they tried to do something similar, right? And just kind of tweak it to make it a little bit different. But with Final Fantasy X's conditional system, the Trails series battle systems, Trails of in the Sky and Cold Steel, those games, they have something very similar where you can see the turn order. And surprise, surprise, like those are very popular games among JRPG players. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think Square kind of blew it with not taking another look at Final Fantasy X's combat.
You know what battle system really stuck out to me? I really enjoyed Final Fantasy XII's battle system. And I think the reason it kind of stuck out to me was because I was one of those salty players that Final Fantasy fans that when Final Fantasy 12 came out and people were saying, oh, like it's more action based, I like scoffed at the idea, like Square's selling out, right? And I didn't pick up the game immediately because I was like, I'm not supporting that crap, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was cancel culture before cancel culture, you know.
Now
So
15, 12 looks more strategic than ever.
yeah, but like I was one of those people, and then I ended up picking up Final Fantasy 12 later when it was, like $20. And I was like, I guess I'll give it a chance. Maybe I'll have a good story, you know. And I ended up loving the battle system. And I think that the reason I like it is because what I enjoy in RPGs is the preparation aspect, meaning I know that there's an obstacle coming up. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to, farm items. I'm going to do whatever I got to do to overcome this obstacle. I like preparing for something as opposed to reacting to something. And so Final Fantasy 12 is all about the preparation, especially the original. Some of those later boss fights are super difficult, and you really have to get pretty like specific with your gambit setup. But there's a lot of different ways you can approach battles based on your gambit setup, and it's just you just live and die based upon your preparation for the upcoming obstacle. And I got so much fun out of it. I got so much fun every time I found a new gambit. I would try to incorporate it into it and make it like super efficient. I mean, I just had a blast. So I really like that battle system. I was kind of disappointed that we didn't try that again because similar to Final Fantasy X, I felt that they could have addressed a few things with Final Fantasy 12 to make it a little bit better. I think a lot of people didn't like the fact that you could automate just basic attacks too. So some people felt that, random encounters or basic battles basically played themselves, which is a fair criticism. So maybe if they kept, maybe a dodge and like an attack mode for basic attacks, but you could automate some of the other stuff, that would make it better. But just having that level of control and just that level of preparation and just being able to, you know, basically craft this like crazy setup is just, I just really enjoyed it. Eric?
The thing I look for a lot is how much player agency you have in the combat system.
Okay.
And when it feels too slow, uh, it kind of feels like it's just waiting forever for my next input. And then when you have something in the other extreme, like 15, where you're just holding circle the whole time until you have to hit square, it's like I feel like I'm not doing anything really productive. I like the feeling of micromanaging a little bit, in uh, JRPGs, like in the fast paced type of way. And while I did enjoy 13's battle system in that aspect, it did feel fast all the time. Um, 10-2's combat is where I'll go for what I think the series should have ideally gone in. That's probably Final Fantasy. That's probably my favorite combat system. It's fast paced. I liked how you switched between jobs during the fights. Like the story, like we've all said, like the story's but the combat is just fantastic. I really wish they apply that type of system into just like fast-paced ATV that you feel like you have control over. Like not so fast that you feel the need for an auto battle, but not slow enough that you feel like you're just kind of waiting for things to happen. Because sometimes you could just kind of press that X button, you're like, come on. And 10-2, I never really felt like that. I felt like just like the bar was built up, you're ready for your next move. You gotta be quick on your toes. That's the kind I like.
Yeah, I really liked 10-2 for that exact reason, just the speed of everything. I also liked, like you said, 13 for the speed, but the issue I had with 13 wasn't necessarily the way it was designed. It was just how restrictive it felt for the first half. I mean, I'm playing an RPG. Let me experiment a little bit, you know? And
Very streamlined. Yeah.
yeah, and 10-2 kind of gets that quickness, but also there's a lot of experimentation with the different classes, you know, that you can try on the fly, and it just gives a little more variety, which is more inclined with the way I prefer it. So I
Yeah,
think,
there's so many right ways to play 10-2.
right.
With 13, there's a lot of wrong ways to play it.
Yeah.
Not dissing 13's combat. It works for what it is. It's just I prefer the like hat to the customization 10-2 over 13's.
Yeah. Yep. So that's our thoughts on our favorite Final Fantasy combat system. Nobody picked Final Fantasy Tactics.
Yeah. I was gonna say none of us picked a Hironobu Sakaguchi game, so I think we might have to go in hiding for a little bit, until the next podcast.
Yeah, well, you know, what are you gonna do? I was gonna, dude. If we would expand this conversation from just combat to also just general gameplay, I could have been talked into Final Fantasy 9, but
Right,
I can't.
yeah.
But I cannot talk. I cannot say Final Fantasy 9 is solely my favorite combat system.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
All right, so I think that's going to wrap us up for this week. I appreciate everyone tuning in with us to while we stream this podcast episode. And if you are not aware, we do have an audio version. It's in the description. And if you're listening to this on audio, come check us out on YouTube, Phoenix Edge RPG Podcast. There'll be a link in the description. But we will be back next week with another episode. Thank you, guys.